keep your motivation. All right. It's really hard to, have faith in your talent and not want to give up when you see, incredible players. And, it's great to be inspired by playing. But, now with the internet, it's really easy to, see people who may be doing multiple takes, maybe, working on a piece for days. And then there's people out there that are speeding up their guitar tracks and using trickery and using technology to make things more impressive than they are. And all those things, I just call them noise. It's all noise. And it's not relative to your personal situation and your personal playing ability. And us old guys, me and the people that watch my channel, it's easier for us to call it quits and just kind of give up because, technology comes. Playing ability now has increased greatly of players. And it's even easier to just, let time take over and give up. But I've never subscribed to that theory. And I can talk about, as a kid, I've seen players. I remember when I was probably about 17 and I was already playing professionally. And I remember seeing players that were like 13, and just playing mind-blowing stuff, enough that you would, if you were weak of mind, you would say, man, well, there's no way I can compete with this guy and, and just give up. I could have just started waiting tables or something, if I'd have thrown in the towel. And, life has a way of, there's a balance. Players like that, these incredible, amazing players, don't always get the opportunities. You're not going to get opportunities based on how fast you can play or how inventive your, lead playing is and your great cadenza, your great solo piece. It's not really based on that at all. So, that's the first time I remember, hearing somebody and just going, this kid is so incredible and I can't play like that, But you've got to focus on your strengths. You've got to focus on what you're doing and focus with laser precision. Doesn't matter. It's just noise. And, going to GIT at a very young age, and I will say, man, the collection of players that they had teaching at that school when I went there, it was just incredible. And, and then there's the students. I went to school with Satchel from Steel Panther. Now, he was known as Russ Parrish back then. But I can remember walking into, GIT, and they had this little cubbyhole practice rooms with a couple of PV or crate practice amps in them. And I can remember seeing a room and there were all these people kind of hovered in, and you just kind of, it's like a moth to the flame. You just kind of poke your head in, and I see a young Satchel. I think he was like 16 at the time. And people were talking to him, and he had just been in Guitar Player Spotlight. And he was just kind of talking about it, and I poked my head in, and I see, this kid there. I'm like, wow, here I am. I'm 18, 19, And this kid's done it. This kid's, you get in that spotlight and you think you're going to be the next Yngwie Malmsteen. And man, that was a great thing and a great little piece of publicity that, Satchel got at the time. But man, he had to struggle just like the rest of us. He had to, share an apartment and live in a dump, and and he had his ups and his downs just like everybody else. Even though he got that little boost, and that was, after Yngwie and a few others, a lot of those guys just didn't really go on to do a whole lot. So I can remember being in my apartment, my little dumpy apartment, and hearing this faint playing in the background, and just the most bizarre and unique rock playing. I can almost kind of imagine it today, and just hearing this guy through the wall playing this incredible stuff like nothing I'd heard, nothing I heard at GIT, and nothing I've heard since. Just liquid, playing and all this. And I eventually kind of saw the guy in the hallway. It was just a little short, guy, probably around my age. And I don't know if he was going to school at GIT or what was going on, but I said, man, I heard you practicing, bro. You sound incredible. And he's like, oh man, thanks, brother. I'm just, a very humble guy. I mean, and living in that crappy apartment that we lived in, you had to be humble, cause man, and I can remember the great Dan. I think it was Dan Gilbert was his name, and he lived in that building, the same building that I lived in, and man, he was an incredible player, incredible. He could play look, there's certain things that you would learn at GIT, and that would be taking every scale and learning every sequence of that scale possible. And man, I didn't get that far. I had to get little bits and pieces and things, okay, this is seconds, and this is fourths, and this is fifths, and all that. But man, getting them through all the scales and getting them, being able to play every single sequence. There were guys like Dan Gilbert, who could and could play it, up and down, whatever scale you named, could do it. And you can't compete with a guy like that. You have to be the best you that you can be. And so it's important not to get discouraged. I don't even really go on Instagram anymore. There's a couple players that I watch on there, and a couple young players that are, really doing, great playing and stuff. But, it's like at this point in my life, I already know who I am. People that, hired me know what I do. And, my online, session clients and air gigs, they already know, what I'm going to do and what I bring to the table. So you really just have to focus on that and find things that you can learn and pick up from these amazing players that you're going to see. You're going to always see somebody that's incredible. When I turned on YouTube just to get some inspiration before shooting this video, I was reminded of a video of this guy. I think he was on acoustic guitar playing All of Me, Gypsy Jazz. And it's just an incredible playing. And I can't play like that. I can only be the best me that I can be. And I'm, largely, I don't call myself any more than an intermediate player. I like to think about it now as, garden variety guitar player. And, that's largely what most people need on a gig. I can throw some chord subs in and I can do some things to hit chords up and stuff, but man, I'm not like super deep into jazz, and I'm not super deep into rock, and I'm not super deep into country. I know enough of all those styles that I can cover them on a gig, and I can play them convincing, and I can get a great tone, and I can, play tasty style playing. And when it's time to play some over the top, rock playing, I can do that. And I can make it feel good. I can make the song feel good. I can make the groove feel good. I can lock in with a drummer, lock in with a rhythm section, and make it sound good. And that's really all you need to be able to do as a musician. And it doesn't matter what instrument you're playing. Yes, you need to be able to play over a major 7 chord, and you need to be able to play some 2-5-1 licks, and you need to be able to play in all keys. Saw some young keyboard player that I had done a couple gigs with in Nashville, and I've heard that young keyboard players, everything they do is using the transpose button on a keyboard. So if they have to play in A flat, they just hit the transpose button, and that is a way of cheating on keyboards. And he was trying to justify that. Well, y'all guitar players, y'all use capos, and you don't consider that cheating? Well, first of all, I don't like to use capos, and I can play in any key, and I can play over any chord, and I'm not a fan of capos. Now, there are times where if I get called to play some country song and immediately hear it, and the voicings are all capo, voicings, cowboy chords, but up high, I'll pull out a capo, because that's just the only way to make it sound like the record. But you got people using trickery these days, and it's impressive if a guy can play a lot of cool stuff, but it's not impressive if that person has to play everything in the key of C, and so they're a master of the key of C. That's just not the way it's done. And you're gonna find one day you're gonna get somewhere and somebody's gonna ask you to play something, and maybe you're in a studio and they go, "Oh, can you go play this on the real piano?" You're gonna find there's gonna come a time when you're gonna be a little bit embarrassed by your lack of just the garden variety chords and scales in every key. So, it's important to learn your instrument. It's important to be versatile and just tune out the noise of the incredible players who make their career about, look at me, look at me, look at me. Yeah, okay, cool. Now what? It's real easy to get sucked into that and to get depressed. There's no need to get depressed. Just turn it off. Turn it off and pick up your guitar.